Um, okay, one of the main goals of a family life educator is to become more effective ambassadors of family, science, scholarship, citizens of the world. Um, so this made me think about in my practicum course as I try to prepare for workshops. Um, an example that was of somebody advocating for in my family child advocacy class, where he went to the United Nations and he was a law professor and he had to use basic truths about families because he was not advocating for a specific group or specific culture. He was advocating for the family in general. But what I thought is that there's some truths I can draw upon, and some studies that I can draw upon that can help families everywhere. Even though moving into the target audience, um, or I'm sorry, helping a target audience would be you'd have to really specialize that. But I feel like as a general rule, there's some truths there that would help all families and all audiences. But as far as the target audience goes, you really have to make sure that you're helping them. And if you're going into for example, I'm doing my family practicum on parenting. So if I'm going to teach parenting to a group of um, older women or older people from an old folks home, that's not going to be very effective for them. And they're not going to be very interested. Um, but those principles would stand the same, but I've got to make sure that what we're teaching is actually going to help our target audience, that it's applicable to them. Um, so I thought it was interesting the earliest root of the family life education was traced back to collaboration between church and state, which watching a video in another class about No Intelligence Allowed documentary, I'm sure you've all seen it and remember it. It talks about the intelligent design theory is no longer allowed to be mentioned in science, and it's just thought very badly upon. And what's interesting is when that happens, the the point of the show was that it takes people away from being important. So if there is no importance with people, then what is the point of the family? But that's kind of where our world is kind of headed, at least a good portion of them, at least science in America and many other countries. So I think you have to keep in mind too. You have to. I think when you're family life education, you have to open your mind not only to the target audience and what they need, but potentially to any predispositions they might have. Like, you know, are they going to think that people are, no better than apes? And how can you inspire them or help motivate them to even have an interest in what you feel like they might need to know? Um, so I think that's just some interesting things to kind of consider there. Um, so I put down some bullets that I thought would be a guide to creating a family life education course. Um, some of them are the most effective approach to family emanates from a perspective of health and well-being. So that would be a good approach to it, especially if they thought that it had some of those predispositions. The capacity of parents to raise children effectively is influenced by their own development. Um, Social support networks are essential for families' well-being. Um, Families that receive support become empowered to advocate on their own behalf. So I was thinking, families have to have all of those things to survive and thrive. But where problems arise, maybe like a family doesn't have a support group. Maybe a kid that may have a boyfriend or has a family or some kids. Maybe they don't have a supportive family system in their parents. And in I don't know if it was this class, but I remember reading that one of the when it's especially hard to manage stress and to not go into fight or flight mode, which is is life or death, is when you don't have anybody else to rely on. And the guy who read it said when he wasn't going to meet his mortgage, I think it was either the Depression or right after World War II. But that opens up the door to government programs, and people that don't have anybody else to rely on as government programs, and also the welfare system. And those, I think, although they become crutches that are not healthy, the government programs, the welfare is much better at not becoming that. But I think that those are tools that you can use and educate about too, depending on what your target audience is. It's important to look at outside resources. I see myself becoming a family life educator. I'm fascinated with this topic. I didn't even know you could do that. But I also see myself self contacting community uh, offices and representatives to see if I can help educate others. I think it would be great to go out and start ask therapy offices if I could come in and do classes, like stress management classes or different classes like that, and to help out that way. One thing that I also thought would be great that I read from this week's readings was talking about collaborating with other sources. One thing that's really interested me, addiction and how that changes your brain and how your brain, decides that your survival function wants the addiction over anything else after death. Well, I think it'd be interesting to pair up with like a neurosurgeon and other specialists and maybe a university to pull some studies, to do some studies for you and write a book and get some new research out there that can help families become maybe addicted to their family or maybe, addicted to something good as they try to overcome addiction. But I think there's a lot of resources out there you can use, especially when doing your classes, your workshops, and that I could use. Um, so another thing is the principle of readiness for change. Problems are best solved when family members are mentally and emotionally ready to grow, and when family members are feeling safe and valued. So I had have you ever had an experience where you tell somebody something and they just don't care, like they don't listen, and you can tell that they really just don't care? Um, I wonder what it is that causes that. Like, why don't they care? I was talking to a social worker today, and he said, a lot of families that get their kids taken away from them just don't care. And you think, how can we fix that? How can we help them? What kind of studies can we do to research that out? I was contemplating that. But anyway, my time is up, and I'm excited to watch all your videos.